Thank you. So welcome everybody. My name is Gabor Besni. I'm from Globalies, as Maciej mentioned it, and I will talk about to you about the impact of AIs on the industry, on our future. I'm happy to see that some of you are interested here, and you can tell the others, but they have to face in a few months and very soon. Just a little bit about my background. As you can see, I'm a splitted personality. So one part of me is a translator. I'm from the software localization industry, but the other part of me is coming from the machine translation industry. And basically, I'm involved in both. And this is why I hope that I can give you a view from both directions, so not only from the technical, but also from the human perspective, from the language expert perspective. So let's take a look about the trends we have. I try to make it quicker because I think the real interesting part is at the end of the presentation. First, I try to give you an overview, and in the second part, I have some real-life examples. We have, I think, interesting use case project which I would like to show, at least some highlights I will show to you, and of course it would be great to discuss a little bit at the end of the presentation. So let's take a look at the trends in the industry. So I think it's still it's obvious that we have an increasing demand for translation. It's not about the volume, it's also about new languages. Typically, so far it was the European languages, Asian major languages were in focus, but now the new trend is that smaller languages, which probably no resources are available for at all, are also increasing in demand. The other is that turnaround times, as we heard before, that you need APIs, you need any kind of automations to make things happen faster, so to deliver the translation faster. We have more frequent projects, so projects are not high, especially in the software industry. You have small chunks with a very quick turnaround time, and with only a few words of only a few segments sometimes within one project. And of course for multiple languages, sometimes dozens of languages, as we heard in the previous presentations. And we have a booming technology, so we have now MT is obvious, but now AI is the next thing which is coming, and this is, I think, we can tell already that this is now where we can say it's close to disruption. So we had it before. We said that language industry is resistant against disruption, but I think now we have a little bit reconsider our future. And before starting with that, just to make a little bit, because I have the feeling that there's some confusion about what is AI, what is behind AI, because as we heard in the keynote speech, typically when we speak about AI, everybody thinking on ChatGPT, but ChatGPT is only one derivation of the AI technology. Basically, what is behind AI are language models, but even within the language models, we have a lot of tons of different types trained or created for different purposes. So ChatGPT is really designed for chat, but there are other models. There are instruct models, there are models created for picture, like DALL-E, etc., and Whisper, so for text-to-speech, and all the technology behind that, so from the technical perspective, they have the common roots, but they are all even common data sets, but they are trained differently and they can be used for different purposes. So that's good to clarify that ChatGPT is not the only one, so you should not be only focused on ChatGPT. And even within one GPT, even within ChatGPT or the GPT models, you might have different generations, different variations. So choosing the right model is one of the challenges we have in the industry. So it's a very, very colorful world of the large language models. It's not only ChatGPT. And you have many, many different settings, so you can see it, you can have the temperature and tons of additional settings, and all these things, and these are only the fundamentals, and then the prompt is going on top, so that's a pretty complicated landscape. But they are very capable, and what are the consequences of these new trends and these very, very capable large language models? So one, I believe, is that workflows and processes will change completely. I will go into the details. Tools will change completely. Translation tools we are using. Tasks and roles will completely change. And prices, thank you for the correction. Pricing will change completely. Pricing model. So that means our world will change completely. This is my statement, and within a pretty short time frame. So let's take a look at the processes. This is a typical process we have in the software localization. Dark blue is representing the buyer, so the developer company, the software company. Light blue is representing the internal translation department, and green is representing the LSP, the external translation provider. And you can see we have, so content is created, modified, exported, then it's somehow transferred to the internal provider, internal translation provider. Then it's prepared for translation. You have to convert it into a tool, CAT tool. You have to do all the additional stuff. Then it's sent to the external provider. It's translated, etc. So you have a huge, complicated loop, and you have within that you have back loops. Once the translation is checked, then in context, then you have to do the export again. And you can imagine if you have only 2 or 3 segments in one project, this is highly inefficient. So it's not sustainable. You cannot do that on the long run. So this is one of the big challenges, and this will definitely change, I believe. So the future looks like something like this, that you have the content created, of course, and then the content is instantly machine translated without any interaction. Basically, it's out of the box, instantly machine translated. And in many cases, it will be instantly published, because you have use cases, risk assessment is something which will come to categorize the content types. So there are low risk content types which can be instantly published, no problem. There are some, let's say, medium important content types. Maybe there you have some QA check, and then of course there might be very risky contents where you have to be very careful. That will be then fully human post-edited. But we have a very short loop for many of a big portion of the content. I think this is the smallest. So this is the smallest part where even any human post-editing will happen, and all this. I believe that the future is that quality assurance work, any kind of quality assurance work, will happen in context, because this segment-based approach makes no sense. You cannot really improve quality only seeing the segment. You can improve as a human post-editor. You can improve the quality by seeing the complete document, if you have a complete picture. Because otherwise you cannot do better work than a well-working machine. Okay, let's talk about the tasks and roles. So this is the typical setup we have now. Translation is the biggest portion of the project. Everything is about translation, pricing, processing. Everything was in the past about translation. And if we are lucky, then we have some preparation before. If we are lucky, we can do some terminology work before. But hands up, who had a real terminology project before a new product starts, translation starts? Because I cannot remember even when we had it in the last time, when we had time to do some serious terminology research work before translation time, because project is coming, please translate it as fast as you can and turn it back as fast as you can. That's the typical. And the same quality assurance after sometimes, so in the past it was not really significant. Sometimes it happened, sometimes not, but typically it's not happened. And this will definitely change, I believe. So and why will it change? Because the translation process will completely disappear, or at least automate it so in such a high extent that you don't need it really. On the other hand, in order to enable that, you need to do preparation. You need to do work before the project starts, and you need to do work after the project, and I will come back to that the details later on. But this is definitely what will change. And what tasks will we have for the QA before the project starts? Of course, the terminology work, that's essential. That's one of the most important. And I'm happy if this change will happen, and I believe that will happen. Then I think we all will benefit from that. Customers, LSPs, and translators, because this boring conversion from one string into the other, from the language into the other, it's boring, but terminology work, real terminology work, that's interesting. Yeah, training data set maintenance is also very important because to enable the machines, AI or neural machine translation engines, whatever, to enable them to work efficiently, you need you need a proper data set. You need a high quality data set. And what is at least as important is the reference data set, because to measure the quality properly, you need good reference. The typical problem you have that you have no good reference points to measure the results of the automation. In order to do that, you need a high quality reference data set. This is what typically is missing, but in the future, I think this will be in one of the main tasks to create of the translators, of the linguists, to create this reference data set so that the engines can automatically learn what is the expected output. Data labeling, content qualification, metadata creation, empty quality evaluation. These are also tasks before the projects because you have to fine-tune the engine, you have to fine-tune the LLMs to check what is working, what is not working, because there's no good solution so there's not one size-fits-all solution, at least in the software localization world, but I believe in any of the industries it's not really working well. So you need to evaluate, you need to do preparation. Yes, and prompting, prompt testing. That's I think that's one of the, because data creation was in the neural MT world, so this training data creation was important for the custom neural engines, but prompting and testing the results of the prompts are even so this is what we do now, basically nowadays, what's happening. And the good thing is that this is again something which doesn't requires an engineer necessarily. So this is really something which can be done with a skilled linguist can do that. That's the beauty of large language models. You can basically talk with the model. You can ask for things, and the formulation and all these different way how you are asking for some results have a huge impact on the results. Of course, the metadata, I mean the additional context you are providing has an impact as well. But also the formulation, how do you, even just to give you an example, we have custom prompts in our engines. We are combining in our MT solution now the large language models with NMT output. You can ask for, so you can enter custom prompts. And one of the well-working prompts is to ask the engine to use formal speech or informal speech. But if you are simply asking, okay, please use informal speech, then it will not work. But if you are asking, please use informal speech in the translation, it will work. So even such small differences in the formulation, in the instruction you are giving to the engine in the prompt might have a difference in the output. Okay, so you see, translation has disappeared. So in the processing part, translation is done by the engines or by the AI or by the LLMs, you name it. But QA might, of course, still be important. So during translation, you can QA and source is very important. This is what I'm missing very, very much in the industry. That's everybody is talking about the translation, but it's the focus is. I think the source quality is at least as important than the translation part, because if you have wrong source, you know how especially English source is created by non-native speakers, how it can look like in the software industry. It might be very interesting. So quality assurance on source, and this is again one of the important tasks of the linguists in the future, I believe. It's not only the translation, but providing feedback on the source and performing corrections on the source. That's at least as important than the translation itself. And of course, quality assurance on the target, what we are calling post-editing. And then after the translation happens, quality assurance after processing is the in-context review. As I mentioned, this is very important. That review should not be restricted on the simply comparing source target strings. That makes no sense. Or segments, because what is a segment? So in context and in application testing is essential, and I think this will be the future. And of course, all the tasks what we do in the preparation phase are also relevant in the post-processing phase of the project, like creating the training data set, perform corrections in the training data, correcting the prompt, etc. Okay, changing in the tools. So what do we have today? So tools are focused on segments. So we are working on segment base, which is, I think, it's a kind of funny thing. So it's really because of the past, because of the 80s when they started. Tools are editor heavy, and they are not really. And what I miss personally from, I think, almost all of the tools is that quality assurance is something like an addition. While I think that's in the future quality assurance, and this is then leading us to the change. So the quality assurance will be the hero. So, for example, performing terminology replacement, automatically finding errors and correcting errors, changing the content type, etc. So analysis, manipulation, QA, prompting tools. These will be the focus of the in the future, and these are the most important part of the translation tools of the future. Of course, some kind of editor we still need, but this is not necessarily the most important part. Changes in pricing. Volume-based pricing. So if you have a lawyer, would you pay your lawyer for, or do you know any lawyer who is asking for payment based on the character he's writing in the contract? That's absurd. So volume-based pricing, especially nowadays, where you see that part, the translation part, is the smallest part in the overall process, but you need to do a lot of before and after it. Volume-based pricing is not working simply. And the same goes for the fuzzy match and edit distance and any other similar automated metrics. They are not working anymore, really, especially in the large language models, because they are producing typically good content. And if there's a change to a reference, why it's not necessarily bad. It's sometimes even good if you have a change compared to the reference, because we have this myth about the high-quality human translation, but between us we can say that not all of the translations are high quality always, even if it's done by humans. So, and what will come? So I believe that in the future we will go back to the hourly-based approach, or project-based, or flat rate models. That's the future, because we have so many different tasks, and as I mentioned, the translation task itself is the smallest part of the overall process. This is how effort can be really measured, and I think it's a good thing, because translation should be repositioned. It's not a work. It's not hard work which can be measured by, okay, how many cubic centimeters or meter or cubic meter of earth I have moved during the day. It's much more complex. The work of a translator is much more complex. So we should reposition ourselves more as a kind of consultant or a high quality work which can be measured by an hour, because it's taking my precious time. So I need to do something as a translator, and that takes time. So I have to be paid by my time. Okay, now this is leading us to this example I have. So it was a recent project we performed. It was a software UI translation with 50 target languages, including some really exotic languages or small languages, let's say that way. The overall volume was 800 key characters. It's a very interesting domain, law enforcement. So it's about prisons and prisoners. Very exciting domain. And the target was, or the task we were asked for, was simply raw machine translation output. So, and this is also typical, that many of the users or vendors or buyers, they are not necessarily asking in the initial step for a fully fledged human translation. It's enough to have a raw machine translation, and then all the let's say the post-editing work will happen in context by using the application, and probably even in a time from the time perspective later on, maybe years later on, because it's good to have 50 languages, but many of the languages are not necessarily required instantly. But it's good to have them in the software, so the quality assurance will maybe happen only in 1 year, or maybe never, because it's never used. But it's so cheap, you can afford it, and it's there. So the task was to have raw machine translation output, and we could do it with one engineer, one linguist, or project manager, and one prompt engineer, basically. And if you imagine what we created a custom API. Of course, we did some preparation. We had to do some preparation, and that was the most intensive part of the work. To identify the issues, the problems we have to solve, because you cannot simply run it as it is through a machine, and because the results will be not sufficient. And these were the challenges, so identifying which abbreviations are challenging, the keywords, the context window is very important. Because you heard that now you can put 128,000 character or tokens into the large language model, but this is only the input, but the output is much smaller. The output is only 4,000 tokens. You cannot send a complete document to the model for translation. And the context window, if it's too big, that's not necessarily good, but if it's too small, that's again not necessarily good. So that was a challenge. And of course the validation, how to validate if we have found the right prompt, the right setup for this engine, that was the challenge. And these are now some, sorry for the German examples, so my German is much better than my English. And this is what I could, but this is an example. So here, this sentence is after 15 minutes you can leave your cell. And this is how, if you are sending it to a generic MT, these are two common MTs, then you can see that here the terminology cell was not matched at all because it's a room, and here cell was translated well, but the sentence is not really good. And this LLM, after some customization, prompt engineering, it's pretty good. And then here, this is the challenge. So you can see here that it's not simply prison. We have different security levels of prisons. So one is the for the killers, and the other is if you have so if your crime is not that serious, then you have a different security level, and this is what you can see here. But if you are sending it segment by segment to any generic MT or any generic large language model, then it will not even recognize that there is a difference. You can see it was all translated as prison. So so this is again something you have to do in advance. This is the work that you have to do identify that there is a terminology issue. So you have here different terms for the same, which is for the normal. For me, I was not aware of that there are different security levels. In this project, we identified that, and of course, you have to handle it. You have to do some research. And by the way, large language models are great for for terminology research. And that's here you can see. Here, Haftanstalt, Gefängnis, Strafenstaat. So these are the perfect translations for these three different type of prisons you have. And I think that's also, I'm not sure about the English, but I think it's fine. So, and this is the difference. So this is how you can use large language models, custom, of course, with custom prompts, so it's not simply out of the box, so you have to do some work before, but this is basically what you can achieve. And then as a ramp up, I would say, because this is what we recognize, that in many cases the large language model provided even a better translation than the human translation which was already available. At least for the good big languages, so German, English, and that's so the big languages. Of course, the other smaller languages are not necessary. But I think we can say now that AI, if the prompt is right, has reached a level that the quality is really good. And the translation and translators, as they were known, will disappear, and basically we will have a switch from this editing of the translation conversion step into data manipulation, prompt engineering. So that will be the future, and this is coming pretty soon. I would say it's already here. It's only the question is if it's a few months or a few years, but it will come very soon. And that's it. Thank you very much.